Hello humans, today I wanted to talk about this guy right here. This is the Rake Knives p661. It's a fairly simple liner lock pocket knife. I picked this up 2 years ago now, wow. And it's actually a nice little knife, so let's get into it. First thing first, we have a 14C28N blade. The liners, they actually specify that they have 420HC liners, which why not 420J2 at that point? Why even mention the liner material? I think that that's a very, very interesting thing they've done. I'm not against it by any stretch of the imagination. I actually think it's kind of cool. It's a little weird. And of course we have G10 scales. This is very, very comfortably in a budget knife. It costs 46 Canadian dollars. Slightly under a 3-inch blade. They're advertising it at 2.91 inches, which is pretty much what I measured it out to as well. In terms of design, the actual blade itself is a pretty simple drop point. It has this like pseudo swedge that goes almost to the tip, so you have this like semi-reinforced tip area. It definitely is cool detailing if you like that kind of thing. I actually find it really, really nice to look at, and it does give you a much more robust point for poking tasks. This does somewhat feel like a small, I hesitate to say defense option, just because this isn't what I would typically want in a defensive situation, but if you're one of the people who subscribe to, you know, utility first, defense second, this does make a reasonable option, in my opinion. It's definitely not big. I can get a 4-finger grip on it, but I'm limited in what grips I can actually hold, especially when you're talking combat grips. My training mostly involves a saber grip, and this is just a little bit too small for a saber grip in my hand. For a woman, like women's pockets, this will fit nicely in women's pockets, and generally having a smaller hand, this would give you more options with the grip. But for me personally, it doesn't quite fit that role. So the swedge is more just aesthetic detail. It does reinforce the tip a little bit, but it's mostly aesthetic detail. We have essentially a paragraph on the blade. I'm not necessarily huge on this. I think the things I would remove, I don't mind model numbers or knife names on blades. I actually find it really helpful for managing a collection. But I don't think we need the product number. I don't think we need Stanvik. Everybody knows what 14C28N is, and we definitely don't need the word steel there. So I think that this could be 2 very, very small lines with model and blade steel. Personal preference. And then rake on the other side. The way they spell rake is interesting, but every time I've heard it pronounced by a salesperson or anything like that, they always pronounce it rake knives, so that is what I am running with. We have a very strong detent. The rake knives in general tend to have stronger detents. This one here is not quite as bad as some of the others I've played with, but if you're not used to flicking a knife, this will absolutely wear your thumb out with a little bit of time. It's just strong enough. That being said, as a result of that, it is very difficult to fail this knife. Like, it takes quite a bit of effort to actually not get the knife to go. There we go. Phosphor bronze washers. This is fairly smooth action for phosphor bronze. You definitely do feel it. Like, it's not quite as what you'd expect out of bearings, but it is still very, very smooth. You have a little bit, where is it, of double clutch right there. But it's really not too bad. This is very, very much designed to be a right-hand only knife. We have a right-hand bias lock. In the liner lock, we only have 1 thumb stud. I don't believe you can actually switch it to the other side, and even if you can, you really get no space on this back scale to get your finger under there. So it is really and truly 1 opening method and 1 hand bias. That being said, because it is right hand only, you do have very good access to the liner lock. This cutout makes a very easy spot to put your thumb. And you have a little bit of scalloping and stuff just to get underneath that thumb stud, give it a good flick, which is actually quite handy. So I'm not necessarily huge on right hand biased or hand biased knives necessarily, but if you have to have one, this one here does seem to be pretty reasonable. You don't quite have a deep carry clip. Your the top, what's it called there? The top body screw actually is a little bit higher than the pocket clip. Kind of annoying. At 46 Canadian dollars, I'm not going to complain about it though. This is very, very much a budget knife. We have a lanyard post in the back with a G10 back spacer that kind of protects it, which is interesting. I do think it is a nice looking knife, especially for the price. Size-wise, it's not bad. It does a good job. They target 58 to 60 Rockwell on their 14C28N. I'm not really going to have that much of an opinion. It holds an edge okay. It's pretty standard, in my opinion. The action on this does actually feel really, really good in terms of, I think it's T8 and T6, but let's double check that. T6. Pocket clip screws are absolutely T6, and the body screws are also T6. And then up a size to our T8. Don't poke myself in the hand. Yeah, and that pivot's definitely T8, so pretty standard affair. It'd be nice to see T8 all around, but on a knife this size, it really is not that big of a deal. The spine isn't quite crowned. It is at the back, but not by the front, but it is very nicely sort of made more comfortable. The finer points of actually using this knife are really nice for a right-handed person. The ergonomics are good. The pocket clip stands a little bit proud at the bill, and there is a little bit of a sharp spot just on the inside of the liners, but the way that the actual handle is designed is quite comfortable, especially just in sort of your standard grip or your gorilla grip, hammer grip, whatever. So it does make a comfortable implement to use. Let's do our blade stock thickness. This feels like a very slicey knife. I know part of that is going to be the full height. Let me double check and make sure I'm not lying to you guys about it being full height flat. Yeah, full height flat grind. So it definitely does feel very, very thin. Why are you in millimeters? You should never be in millimeters. I want 100ths of an inch. Am I annoying Europeans right now? Maybe. Yeah, so right around 117, 115 thousandths. Total blade stock thickness, which is pretty reasonable. It's not uncommon in an EDC knife. Action is really, really good. As a result of having that heavier detent, it absolutely just rockets out. But again, you only get one opening method, right? This is my absolute favorite type of thumb stud. I call them mushroom caps. You have a little bit of a smaller section where if you're not super used to flicking a knife or whatever, you can get the nail of your thumb under there, and it makes it super natural, but it's also not pointy at all. So if you need to just ride it out, you can. Slow roll on this is actually kind of difficult, but it does work. Absolutely rockets out. It's not by any means a heavy knife, but it does feel fairly small in the hand. A part of that is this vertical height. Let's actually do our size comparisons real quick. So here it is next to the Civivi Chevalier and the Wee Knives Banter. Ooh, as you can see, it is it's basically the same size as the Banter, ever so slightly longer. So this does technically fit into what I would consider to be a medium-sized knife, which makes sense, because I can get a full 4-finger grip on it. It feels smaller than it does. A big part of that is the vertical height. The Banter has a very hand-filling grip for its length, whereas this, in my opinion, doesn't really. It's not uncomfortable, like I've said. It is actually quite nice to hold, but it is limiting because of how non-hand-filling it is. Here it is next to a Buck 110 and a Zippo lighter. Let's see. Yeah, so it's not super duper thick. You can see it's a good deal thinner than the Buck 110. And it'll be pretty comparable. It's a smidgen smaller than the Zippo, but really not by all that much. Yeah, it snaps super nice. Edge retention's been pretty good for me, and it does have a very pokey tip, both because of just this drop point shape comes to a nice acute tip, actually. This isn't a factory edge. I'd like to make that very, very clear. Typically, I only do this test with factory edges, and it's the same reason I don't do cut tests with paper on knives that I've had for a while or that are secondhand, because I want to get the factory edge, just to kind of get an idea of how that is. But I am going to do a poke test because I feel like there is actually something to be gained from doing a poke test in this specific instance. So, yeah, it just absolutely sinks in there. Yeah. Another reason for that is we do actually have a full-length distal taper. So this is, like, for puncturing tasks, opening Amazon packages, stuff like that, like, this does an extremely good job. Another nice thing I like about this drop point, because it does drop a little bit in the spine, if I'm opening up a long thing of material, like if we get a bunch of pipe in, and it's wrapped in that cellophane to protect it, this is a very nice knife just to lay the spine down on the back of the material and drag it along the material, and it just slices right through all the material, all the packing material, very, very easily doing it that way, which is quite nice. Overall, well, okay, real quick. Rake knives. Knife world, very interesting place. What you see a lot of is people boiling knives down to the company that makes them. And the world ain't existent like that right now. So there is a little bit of a consideration of like where the company that owns the manufacturing is based out of. Rake is a Canadian company that specializes in doing Chinese manufacturing. They make a ton of stuff. They made a ton of stuff before knives, but their bread and butter is, it's a Canadian company, a company based in Canada that does Chinese manufacturing, organizes overseas factories and working and all that kind of stuff. So some places will call this a Canadian knife. Some places, if you look at area of manufacture, it is China. But take from that what you will. It's kind of like the buck knives that are made in China instead of the USA. Yes, the company is American. This knife in particular is not. The company that makes this is Canadian. This knife is not. It is Chinese made. It's well made, don't get me wrong. Like, it feels really good, especially, again, 46 Canadian dollars, right? And that's off their official site. Other places do have deals and stuff like that at times. So, yeah, there is some jimping on the back. This is not enough. The jimping is not aggressive enough to really feel. And the spine is so nice. Like, the spine really does feel nice. I would actually prefer just to have no jimping. There's just enough of, like, a finger space where I'm not worried about going onto the blade. And even if I was, this is not helpful. I have to literally use my nail to get anything out of the jimping. So the jimping might as well not be there, and I would actually prefer that it not be there. But overall, this is a really, really nice knife. Yeah, it's under 50 Canadian bucks. It is very comfortably in the budget territory. I would argue it's actually in the more inexpensive end of the budget territory, which is just cool. Minimal construction. It is kind of classy looking, and it does a damn good job. So yeah, if you see one around, it's worth a pickup. Stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.